Hey, what's up, everybody? I decided to do this video on here because I felt like it would be. I'll just share this video on the other page. This on my Mommy Evolve page. So I wanted to come here and talk about the very important topic of vulnerability and self-care. So we know that self-care is this huge topic now that we hear everybody talking about. And what is self-care, right? And I think that self-care certainly has a deeper meaning than I think what many of us assume of it. And so I want to delve into the idea of vulnerability and self-care, because vulnerability in and of itself requires you to really understand the power of not just yourself in practicing self-care, but how your self-care impacts everything and everyone around you, and what is required for you to truly deeply get the self-care that you need, right? So, and to also recognize when others are in requirement of that, and perhaps may need you to either step back or step up in some way that is meaningful for someone. So, if you don't know, my name is Cecile, and I am the creative director of MommyEvolve, CEO and creative director of MommyEvolve, where we provide holistic wellness services for women around intergenerational healing and self-care. And so clearly, this conversation around self-care is critical. So vulnerability and self-care. So I have a few very critical points that you have to consider when you are thinking about vulnerability and self-care. The first thing is the courage to ask for what you need, want, and desire. Okay. And so oftentimes, and I know through my own personal journey, and with all the women who are waking themselves up and seeing things differently and giving themselves a different view of life, this is critical, because part of that awakening, the first part of that awakening for many women is the courage to ask for what they need, want, and desire. I'll never forget, one of my first coaches asked me what I desired. And for me, at that time, I had never heard someone ask me, what do you desire? Because usually you hear, what do you need or what do you want? And I feel like the word desire calls something deeper from inside of you. What does your soul need is what I heard in that. And so that really transformed my mindset around myself and how I was really unraveling myself at that time. Because to have a desire is, okay, you need food and water so you can stay alive. And that's like the basic human need. What you want is what you want. It's just something, oftentimes what we want are things that other people have put into our mindset that we should want. You know, you got to buy the big house, the car, blah, blah, blah. What you desire comes from your soul's needs. It comes from your soul's needs. And so that's going to be individual and unique for everybody. Perhaps you're the type of person that needs more snuggling and cuddling than the typical person, right? Human touch is definitely necessary. But maybe if we need 3 hours, maybe you need 6 hours. And so to be vulnerable enough to ask for that and to expect that from a relationship and from those around you is practicing vulnerability in your self-care. And that can only be asked for if you believe and understand and know that what you are asking for is viable, that you are worthy of receiving it. So the first thing to think about in vulnerability and self-care is the courage to ask for what you need, what you want, but most importantly, what you desire. You truly desire, because that's what's going to fulfill you the most. And nobody else is going to maybe be able to understand it, but you'll ask for it with the understanding that somebody will not only understand you at some point, but they will give it to you. And that's so critical. The other thing that I realized about vulnerability and self-care is that we really have to, and it leads from the first thing, the courage to ask for what you desire, is that you really have to destroy stereotypes and prejudices by challenging them and living your truth. So for me, for a long time, I thought that there were certain things that I could not be, do, or have because of the way I looked, being dark-skinned, being heavy, speaking the way I speak. There were certain things that I just didn't feel like I was entitled to. And I think that this is so critical to really stepping into your power. Again, we are in this evolution stage where a lot of women are evolving. And even in this process of evolving, a lot of women are still putting themselves under these boxes and these constrictions based on how other people are evolving too. And it's going to be very critical for you to destroy these stereotypes so that you can live your personal truth and you can evolve through exploring life through your own internal process. And that requires a lot of vulnerability because there's going to be times where you're going to have to say, I don't know why I desire that, but I do. And you have to be okay with that. Or you have to be trusting enough to know that you will find people who will be like, oh, cool, bet. I'm going to support you with that. Okay. So that's another thing to think about when it comes to vulnerability and self-care. Because my definition of self-care. If you have my Mommy Magic Handbook, then you've read this definition. If you followed and watched any of my videos on YouTube, then you've heard this definition. The definition for me of self-care is your mental, emotional, spiritual needs being met. And your mental, emotional, and spiritual needs being met is not going to be met at the highest level if you're hiding pieces of who you truly are or not exploring the things that you feel or consider because of what everyone else is doing, or being afraid to do something different because of how you look or you think, because life is an exploration. So you may think completely different last year than how you think this year. I would venture to say that you definitely should look into your mindset and how you are evolving, because we're constantly evolving. So if in some area of your life you're not thinking differently than you did previously, then you may not be in your process of evolving the way that you think. Okay? And sometimes we think we're changing, but we are really just transforming or transmuting what we thought we were changing into something else that's not better. Okay. So you have number 1, the courage to ask for what you need and what you want and desire. And number 2, destroying stereotypes by challenging them and by living your truth. The third thing, and this is something that I learned through my process of healing my mother wounds and engaging my courage to destroy stereotypes and be who I am. And that is to set boundaries. And we hear this word boundaries, to set boundaries, all the time, but oftentimes I feel like we set up boundaries that have this iron curtain, right? It's an iron curtain where it's like, all right, nothing can come in, nothing can go out. But if this is a meaningful relationship, such as one with your mother, your father, sister, brother, whatever, then we're going to have to learn how to set boundaries that is based on connection. Right? So I remember doing a mediation between a mother and a daughter, and I told them when they were having the conversation, I told them to ensure that they start the conversation with good things that happen in their lives. Because before they stopped conversing, because there was an issue with the negativity in the conversation generally. So, well, a great way to reset yourself into something for you to think about, because of course, in coaching, etc., suggestions are always offered, right? Because it works for me. I can run you through it. You can practice it. But it was suggested to do that, and it worked for them. So sometimes that quote unquote negative friend or person may need a different reset, a different way of doing things, a different tool or a different strategy for when it comes to having conversation with people, because they're not used to that. But I think that we live in a society now where people are too prone to throwing people away. And I don't think that that's useful. I don't think that that's useful. And mind you, I used to think that way. I used to think that way. And I understand the initial jerk and need to do that. But when you consider it, it's just not a useful strategy, especially in relationships where it's not like it's something done that the person tried to kill you or something like that. It's that the person is working through their own personal issues or mindsets, and they're in need of the space to do it and perhaps the tools. And that's not to say that you have to become their therapist or anything like that. But my point is that instead of having the first reaction of, okay, I got to cut it off, perhaps you can set new standards. That's something to think about. Set new standards based on how you're feeling about the situation. They may encourage it, try it. They may not. But give it a fighting chance is my point. So that's my third one. The next one is opening your communication. This is related to the last one. Open your communication abilities. Again, I think that we all can benefit from learning how to communicate better. Oftentimes we get stuck up here, and I'm a very heady person. Okay. I'm very cerebral. And so I have to learn to, when I'm up here thinking, I do it all the time now. I'm over here overthinking what I think somebody may be thinking or doing or saying inside themselves. And I'm like, well, what if I just ask the question? What if I just ask the question? You know, how about I transform this and I run a question through my mind that's going to be productive to see where they're at, as opposed to assuming. How about if I felt a certain way, I say it to the person so that I can have a fighting chance of getting what I need to serve this relationship better? Communicate, because people don't know what you're thinking. As much as people, I think that the first reaction that we go to oftentimes, and we do this all the time with our children, they should know. Our mate, they should know. Our parents, they should know. But truthfully, why should they know if they've never been told, and if they are on the path of doing something that they've always done? Think about it. And I'm only telling you what I know. I'm only telling you what I know because this is my personal experience. And that level of vulnerability really opens you up for others to see that it's okay to express how you feel. It's okay to ask for what you desire. It's okay to be exploratory in your needs and wants and desires, because we're all trying to figure ourselves out. Right? So being vulnerable in that way and opening up your communication and speaking what it is you want. And what I've found over these few years of working with women is that a lot of women are afraid to say what they desire, what they want, what they're feeling, because they're afraid that they're going to push people away. people are going to find them to be crazy, or people are going to find them to be unstable. And frankly, they might, because many people are struggling with their ability to speak their truth. Many people are struggling with the idea around people should know. And so if you want to be vulnerable and have courage, as you know, I love Brene Brown. And if you haven't seen her, her special on Netflix, and you should. And if you haven't, I've read her book, one of her books, The Gift of Imperfection. And once I get through all these other books I need to read, one of my goals for this year is to read the books that I have. That's going to take me like 3 years, but but never mind that. Okay. Anyway, so, open up your communication. Give yourself the fighting chance to express. And this is not just about other people. It's about what we hold in and how that affects our bodies. It weighs heavy on your heart and your throat, that you are unable to speak your truth. Practice it in the mirror. Practice using words that are better feeling when you're expressing your emotions, as opposed to just, expressing them in anger. Practice using more empowering words. If you feel overwhelmed, people might not understand the word overwhelmed, but they may understand, I feel like I have too many things on my plate and people are always asking me, and I really cannot do it. And I need people to pick up some slack here, because I feel my body getting heavy from all of this. Really go into detail about how you feel. Be expressive. Don't be afraid to communicate all of that. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is to, this is more of a statement. In community requires you to admit that you need to belong. Okay? Community requires you to admit that you need belonging and compassion. So, again, this is very vulnerable for a lot of people, because we may get together with our girlfriends and we'll talk about other people, what they're doing, what they're not doing. But I feel like underneath all of those kinds of conversations is the truth that you yourself need some kind of validation and understanding around what is going on within you. And because that is not, that you feel that you cannot get the level of compassion that is required to heal yourself, or you feel like that healthy belonging is not within your grasp, that is what we turn to sometimes. So we have this social idea that, for example, women can't get together productively. I'll never forget when I was in college one time, my friends, I've always been, the unicorn, the weird one out anyway. And my college friends, they wanted to get together and talk about boys and crap. And I remember, number one, one of the young ladies saying, "Oh, I need you to," because she had multiple boyfriends. I wasn't mad at her for that, but then she tried to pull us into it, right? She was like, "Oh, I'm gonna need y'all to, if one boyfriend come up, I need y'all to hold off that boyfriend till I can get the other one out," type thing. I was like, "Oh no, we need to have a floor meeting." I don't know about them, but that's not the kind of situation I'm trying to forge. That's vulnerability. That's the ability to step up in a conversation with your girlfriends and say, "You know what, ladies, it would probably be more productive if we discussed what's underlying why we're talking about this woman and her marital problems, or why we're talking about this woman and her issues, as opposed to talking about her. Let's talk about the generality of it and how each of us have struggled with this in some way, or we've seen somebody struggle with it." That's community, and that is showing that you need your community, because we have the tendency to want to isolate people when they're going through issues, right? Instead of checking in on them or to throw them away. As I said, this is a very common thing, and I can't even say that I've never done it, because I have, because I was frustrated and I had my own things going on. But number 4, as you said, Danielle, that communication is key. Even if you don't know how to communicate healthily at the time, be vulnerable enough to say that you want to get this out, and be clear that getting it out is not about hurting the other person. It's about solving the issue. It's about becoming clear. It's about loving yourself and the other person, as opposed to holding that stuff in. That's what it's about. We got to learn how to communicate our needs and desires, and communicate and be honest when we're wrong, and be able to look at an issue 360, or should I say 180? I don't know. Anyway, so as I said, the video, the Brene Brown, any of her stuff, I really enjoy her research and her information so much. I think that it's so powerful. One of the things that she said in her video, it's a TED Talk, TEDx talk, or whatever you call those things. And one of the things that she said that really resonated with me, that I'm going to sort of leave you all with, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in this conversation. One of the things she said is that a lot of people, instead of expressing themselves, they'll numb. So we go and we pick up food and drink and whatever other addictions that we have. We live in a heavily medicated, overweight society, right? And she said that we can't numb the bad stuff without closing ourselves off from the good stuff. So what that meant to me was that in vulnerability around what you're feeling and thinking, you open yourself up to more joy, more pleasure, more laughter, more freedom in your mind, body, and spirit. Because what you're thinking, it's still circulating somewhere in your body. It's circulating somewhere in your cells. But once you get it out, you're vulnerable. Now it's out there in the ethers, in the universe, and we can figure out ways to rectify it. Right? But if you're holding it in and thinking that your small body of a space can be the thing that solves it, then you're limiting yourself, and you're literally internally destructing. You're self-destructing. So why not be vulnerable? And everybody that you're going to be vulnerable with is not going to understand it, right? Because we live in a society where, people like to shame people. People are fearful of people who open up and are honest and true. Rejection is very real, a very real feeling. Loneliness is very real. And this is why I think that a lot of times when we're going through healing processes, it can be very lonely. Because, we don't want to bring our stuff to other people. We don't want to give that. We don't want to feel rejected. We don't want to feel ashamed from the things that we may have to tell people that we've been experiencing, because we don't think that other people are experiencing it too. And so I'm not going to say that vulnerability is going to be easy. But what I know about vulnerability and self-care is that level of the standard and the level that many of us are looking to reach in this time, such a time as it is going to require vulnerability. It's going to require you to not give a damn, or give a damn selectively. How about that? Okay. because of course there's going to be people whose opinions and thoughts we're going to care about, or there's going to be some things that we want to selectively filter in. And this is why I love holistic wellness, because these are all mind, body, spirit, but you have to deal with your energy management as well. And know that a lot of us that are dealing with, a lot of women in particular in our evolution right now are dealing with a lot of root chakra issues and a lot of heart chakra situations, very real. And so everything that you try outside of that is not getting the results because there's an energetic imbalance. And you have to learn how to protect yourself energetically and strengthen yourself energetically. And that takes time. It's not, I've been on my journey for years, y'all. Years, literally. And it won't stop. But what I know for sure is vulnerability and self-care brings more pleasure and lightness to your life, because you won't feel afraid to just be who you are. Just be who you are. And I say this all the time. Many of the people that we admire and adore, they're not trying to be somebody else. They're just being themselves. And I think that is what we're attracted to in those people. The fact that they're just literally being themselves. And so that's a call for you to be who you are, to be okay with the fact that you have some crazy stuff that run through your mind sometimes. Okay. To be okay with the fact that you like some of the things that you like. For the longest time, because of the programs that I grew up with, I rejected the fact that I was a bougie woman. Can you believe that? I mean, who would reject the fact that they bougie? Like, I like the fact that I'm bougie. Now I like it. But for a long time, I rejected the fact that I liked the idea or liked the ability to be comfortable. I did. And so I attracted experiences in my life that brought me below the level that I wanted. Now I know better, thankfully. But vulnerability and self-care is really about being who you are. And I hope that you really perhaps take it to your journal and journal about the 5 things that we expressed today. So vulnerability and self-care is about the courage to ask for what you need and want and desire. Vulnerability and self-care is about the ability to destroy stereotypes by challenging them and living in your truth. Vulnerability and self-care is about setting boundaries that encourage connection. Vulnerability and self-care is about opening your communication abilities. Vulnerability and self-care is about community. Understanding that in community, it is required that we admit to the need to want to belong and to receive compassion. Community is critical for self-care. Critical. We cannot heal by just all over there. That's just not how it works. Okay. So we need to know, somebody needs to hold us accountable for what it is that we say that we're healing, that we're evolving from. And who's going to hold us accountable? Yes, the divine, our spirit team can hold us accountable, but it's also great to have other people. We've always thrived in community, so that's okay. So journal about those. Journal about what comes to your mind. For me, journaling has always been a great release. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you just need to think. Maybe you just need to talk to somebody else about this. Maybe you need to consider it with your mate or your community. Maybe you need to take a hot salt bath. Okay. Maybe you need to drink some herbal tea. Okay. The summer solstice is upon us. Hey, Tressa. The summer solstice is upon us. And so that's a great time for, I know for me, I dream more during those times. And I'll actually take teas like motherwort during the new moon or the full moon, to encourage even deeper rest for me anyway, and my ability to dream. And what comes up in your dreams are powerful. Sometimes you need somebody to interpret. Sometimes you'll figure it out yourself. Okay. Oh, I did. Tressa did. I think I met you at Elevation Weekend, didn't I? I met you somewhere, or was maybe not. I don't know, girl. I don't know. Anyway. All right, y'all. So go ahead and practice that vulnerability and self-care. It's so critical. I would love to work with any of you. I have my 6-week Evolve the Inner Mother one-on-one course where we go through different areas, those areas of evolving that are critical for women at this time, dealing with your childhood hurts and wounds and inner child healing, dealing with that guilt and shame, connecting with your desires, all of those things. So you can find information about that at the following website, bit.ly/mom appointments. Don't worry about the fact that it says mom. You don't have to be a mom to work with me at all. It won't allow me to post. Tragic. I don't know why it does that. MommyEvolve.setmore.com. I think that's it. Anyway, I look forward to greeting you and to talking to you. Oh, there it is. MommyEvolve.setmore.com to find that 6-week program, as well as any readings or any other thing that you would like to schedule with me. And I look forward to speaking to you all again. Next week, Friday, follow me on Instagram because I do my mommy chats every Thursday over at Instagram as well. So you can go over there and see the chat. Well, you might not still be able to see the chat from there, but at MommyEvolve on Instagram. So you can follow me there, and you can sign up for Mommy Friends. Mommy Friends you can find on my website, bit.ly/Mommy Friends, which I am building as a global community for mothers to connect, to talk, to learn from one another about the various ways to be the women that they desire to be. I think it's important for us to learn from women all over the world, because you'd be surprised at how our experiences are similar. We like to think that we're the only ones, but we're not. We're not. Anyway, my loves, it's been such a pleasure. And I look forward to speaking to you all again. Peace and love.